Hey, I'm Rob Gant with the Goose Creek Gazette and the Berkeley Independent. I'm here today in Somerville at the Somerville Journal-Scene office with my teammate Roger Lee of the Somerville Journal-Scene. Roger, we made it through another week of football. We've got one coming up. And we got some good games on the slate this week, as you can see. So what's going on over in Dorchester County this Friday?
Well, we've got Goose Creek going to Fort Dorchester. It's going to be a tough out for the Gators, but those two have had some good games over the years. So we'll see if we'll see what kind of plan they have in store for the Patriots.
Well, any plan going over to play the Patriots but needs to involve some prayer, because that's about the only thing that's going to help anybody going over there and playing that bunch. You saw Friday night with what they did to Berkeley. I think Berkeley is a very good football team, and Fort Dorchester over the course of 4 quarters was clearly the better football team. Tell us about that game since you saw it, and then come back to me and I'll tell you what I know about Goose Creek.
Yeah, I mean, the first half was a tight half. Fort came out of it with 2 field goals for a 6-0 lead. The Berkeley defense was looking pretty good, but so was the Fort defense.
That's right.
And then the second half, the Patriots just came out and took the game. I mean, they just dominated. The Stag fans don't need to panic. Fort's one of the better teams around the state, probably, I would think, and they probably didn't have their best game Friday night. And the Patriots played well in the second half. Freshman quarterback Zoltan Osborne threw for 178 yards and a TD. Jaheim Wilson, a defensive back, had 3 blocked punts, and 2 of those put the ball inside the 10-yard line and led directly to scores. So that 44-0 score, you take away those 2 scores right from inside their 10-yard line, it looks like a lot closer game. And it was a closer game than that, but the Patriots were impressive none the least.
Absolutely, sounds like a guy blocking 3 punts. I don't know that I've ever really heard of that.
Yeah, and they said somebody said he blocked one the game before too. So it's like 4 in 2 weeks. So I mean, he's got something figured out.
He's a special teams phenom, evidently.
Evidently, what do you think the Gators might have in store for the Patriots?
Well, what I'll say is, I mean, I highlight Goose Creek. They are coming off a 53-6 win over Stahl. Nice effort, Goose Creek. A business-like performance. They took them out 53-6. The quarterback Manny Mukwamu, he had his best game of the year. He threw 6 touchdown passes. That's in school record territory for Goose Creek. Probably don't know for sure going back to the 60s and 70s, but the 6 touchdown passes is a pretty nice job by him. And he threw 3 of those to Damon Muzan, who's an exceptional receiver for Goose Creek. 6 catches, 118 yards for him. Mukwamu actually threw for 274. I know Malachi Taylor caught a pair of touchdowns for Goose Creek, and I know they also scored 1 on defense. So they're coming off a good effort. They probably have a lot of confidence, and the key here for Goose Creek is, again, I mean, it sounds cliche to say it, you just can't help Fort Dorchester at all. And you have to be able to establish some belief in yourself as the game goes on. You got to be able to get to the second half like Berkeley did, keep it close in the first half, and see what happens in the second half. That's Goose Creek's only shot here, is to really play well over the head and hope Fort Dorchester has a bad game.
Right.
But that's why they play the game. So we'll see what happens over the course of 4 quarters. My expectation would be Fort Dorchester to clearly be the better team.
All right.
What else?
We also have Somerville's going to Berkeley. Rest assured, Berkeley's going to be practicing hard this week after that loss to Fort.
I would think Coach Robinson would have them dialed in this week for sure.
I think we talked about it earlier. They had a couple of weeks off, or I don't know how many. You can talk about that in a minute. But I think they were a little bit rusty at Fort. But last year, these 2 teams met twice. They were both 1-score games. Berkeley won the first one at Somerville, and then Somerville in the 3rd round of the playoffs eliminated the Stags from the playoffs with a loss in Monk's Corner. And so, there's these players are familiar with each other. That both teams lost a lot of seniors, but they also returned some of their stars from those games. And again, I think the 44-0 loss is a little bit it's not as bad as it looks because they had some short fields, even not just those blocked punts, but they had some unfortunate things happen that gave the Patriots some short fields, and they were one play that the Stags had Fort running back stopped for a short game, but then they let him, had two guys on him, but they let him slip through and score a touchdown. So I think Somerville can expect a really good game with Berkeley. Somerville is coming off a 17-14 win over Cane Bay. The game came down to a late field goal. So give it to the Somerville kicker. But they also had some other guys step up in that game. Quarterback Colby Shirey had 11 passed through for 11 completions and 117 yards. Also added like 30 rushing yards. So the quarterback had a good game. Brody Hopkins had 90 yards of receptions and had 40 yards on a fake punt because he also is Somerville's punter. So that gave him a big first down. The running back tandem that Somerville has, combined for about 100 yards. Neither of them, surpassed that benchmark, but that's because they're both carrying the ball a lot this year. So Somerville has a lot of things they can do. I look for them. If they can play good defense, they're gonna have a good game in Moncks Corner, I think.
My question would be, I know the coaches at Berkeley will do everything they can to get them dialed in just because of what happened the previous Friday night. My question is, can the players for Berkeley, because they were amped up, they were hyped up, they were excited about the opportunity to go shock the world over at Fort Dorchester, and it didn't work out for them. Meaning, having played sports, I know sometimes it's hard to bounce back from a game like that where you had so much heart and emotion just pointing at that game, and it didn't work out for you. Sometimes that takes time to bounce back from. So what we'll see Friday, if Berkeley comes out dialed in, ready to play, and they've had a good week of practice, I think they'll probably beat Summerville. But if they have a bad week of practice, say it takes them to like Wednesday or Thursday to get their feet under them, this thing is it could go the other way.
Okay, all right. Should be a good game either way.
Also want to add it's Berkeley's Hall of Fame game. They're inducting the latest class of Hall of Famers into their Athletic Hall of Fame on Friday. So I think they're doing 5 this year. So it's a great group. They'll be honoring at halftime. So hopefully the Berkeley, or from Berkeley perspective, hopefully the Stags are ready to get it done on Hall of Fame night for their athletic greats.
All right. We also have Ashley Ridge is hosting Wando. Wando is a team that's had some success this year. They have a win over Somerville. Look for that to be a good game. But Ashley Ridge seems to be figuring some things out. They had a 35-7 win at James Island, set a school record for rushing yards in a single game at 474 rushing yards. A lot of that was behind the running of Troy Grant, who had 250 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground. Quarterback Matt Duncan also had several big runs in that game, and he did a good job throwing the ball to his receivers too. So it looks like maybe Ashley Ridge might be on a kind of hitting a turn. Maybe they're starting to figure out what they need to do to be more competitive, because they're 2-2, which isn't bad. But I feel like their second game of the year against Berkeley, they didn't look sharp at all, and I think I think they were just trying to figure some things out back then. We'll see. What do you think about that matchup?
Well, you said 470-something yards rushing?
474 yards rushing.
Well, that to me right there tells me all I need to know. They just, that's asserting your dominance over somebody when you do that. And so for them to do that, also for them to win in that fashion, that definitely gives them some confidence heading into this Wando matchup, which I think it'll determine kind of which way Ashley Ridge's season might go. If you beat Wando, then you might can finish in the upper echelon of the low country. If you lose to Wando, you're probably going to be in the bottom half there. So Ashley Ridge has a lot to play for, and the fact that you've just run for 474 yards, even though it was against a team that's not great right now, James Island, it's still that's a lot of yards to run for, and that's everything you do on offense. If you can run the football, that sets up everything else. So if Ashley Ridge has a similar type game, it's just running the ball, and they can open up things for Duncan and those receivers, they'll certainly have a chance to win this football game.
Yeah, I mean, I think James Island is 2-2, so it's not like they're one of those teams that just can't win for nothing.
Correct.
So I think if things are looking good for Swamp Foxes.
Yeah, I did predict the Foxes to win on that one. I don't think it took a genius to do it, but hey, I'll take credit for it.
All right.
Go ahead. What else?
That's about all we have on my side of the fence. What's going on in Berkeley County?
In Berkeley County, we've got Timberland traveling over to Hanahan. I saw the Wolves on Friday night, man. They were really impressive. They won 40-3 over Bishop England. Huge game for Jalen Richardson. He had a touchdown catch for 20 yards. He had a touchdown run for 20 yards. He returned a punt 75 yards for a touchdown. He also made several tackles on defense. He dropped 2 punts inside the 10, and earlier he had returned a punt for a touchdown, but the flag came out and wiped it out. So he had just a he had an all-star type of game, kind of like that young man from Fort Dorchester that you mentioned earlier. Timberland travel, like I said, they go over to Hanahan. Hanahan right now is just not having a great football season. They're coming off a 27-18 loss to Philip Simmons, which that kind of surprised me a little bit. But I haven't seen Hanahan this year. Just historically, you would have thought that's the game they would have won. So looking at this one, Timberland's going to roll over there. Hanahan's going to need a minor miracle to keep it close. And Timberland's just playing real well right now. Cane Bay, you mentioned earlier, they lost to Somerville 17-14. They actually host Stall. Stall, again, a football team with some good players, just not quite enough to really compete at this level. I think Cane Bay will get healthy in a big way after the loss to Somerville. I would look for Cane Bay probably to have an opportunity to put up somewhere, the same type of rushing numbers that Ashley Ridge did against James Island. I mean, it's hard to say anybody's going to rush for almost 500 yards, but Cane Bay is a run-heavy offense. They got some good pieces. Stall will probably present an opportunity on defense for Cane Bay to have a huge night running the ball. So don't be surprised if they top 400 yards. That's just my guess. Another game, West Ashley at Stratford. Stratford was off on Friday, but they played 2 weeks before. I thought it was a pretty good, solid effort in a loss to Somerville. That gives me some hope for them that they're going to have a pretty good season in Region 7. This would be an opportunity, like I mentioned earlier with Wando Ashley Ridge, for Stratford to kind of move into the upper echelon here. If they can take out West Ashley, which I've seen West Ashley this year, I think they should be able to. But I will say this, the last couple of years, West Ashley has hung some big numbers on them, like over 50. So if I'm Stratford's defense, I kind of look at what happened the last couple of years, and I'm looking to make a statement. And I think that will be the key to victory, is Stratford being able to disrupt West Ashley on offense. I think offensively Stratford will have some success. Davis, you saw him. He had 4 touchdown passes in the last game. He spread it around to a lot of different guys. So I think Stratford will have some success on offense. Key here is just being able to just do enough to slow West Ashley down, disrupt them. A couple other games, well, several more games actually. Thomas Hayward is at Northwood Academy. The Chargers are coming off a 27 loss to Colleton Prep. The Chargers had some opening week magic with a win. Haven't been able to duplicate that since. Thomas Hayward looks like a pretty good football team to me. Not sure if Northwood will be able to get back on track this week, but it's at Northwood, and I think it's homecoming. They'll give it a good shot. A rivalry game that not a lot of people know a whole lot about is Lake Marion at Cross. If you've never been to a Lake Marion Cross game, you should, at the very least, you should just go for the food and to get a taste of the Blue Thunder. It might even be homecoming for Cross too. I know it's Lake Marion at Cross. Cross is coming off a 22-14 loss to Baptist Hill. To me, that kind of helps me continue to believe that Cross is moving in the right direction. After not winning a game last year, they've won twice this year. They went toe-to-toe with Baptist Hill. Lake Marion is an opportunity for Cross to win. I mean, Lake Marion's had a rough go over it after winning their opener. They've lost like 4 straight in a big way, like in the 50s to nothing type of losses. But they have played a tough schedule. Look for Cross to win here, win a game, and get to 3-2 on the season. I think that'd be for them. But hey, you want some good food? Go out there and eat some food at Cross on Friday, because it'll be there, I promise. St. John's Christian out Palmetto Christian. The Cavaliers are coming off. I call it a good loss. I mean, a 32-24 setback at Andrew Jackson. We mentioned last week Andrew Jackson had won 3 state championships in a row, played for it last year, didn't work out for him. The St. John's Christian made a nice little statement that maybe they'll be a team to be reckoned with in 8-man football. Don't have any stats, but the fact that they hung with Andrew Jackson like they did, that must mean they're pretty good, because Andrew Jackson was pummeling people. Like, they had outscored their opponents something like 170-something to nothing. So for St. John's Christian to go up there and fight back and punch them in the mouth a little bit, look for the Cavs to do some good things this year. That's pretty much it for the high school slate for Berkeley and Dorchester County. Real quick, college football, Clemson's at North Carolina, who's coming off a loss to App State. Clemson's coming off a 41-6 win over Charlotte. North Carolina has already beaten the other program in the state in football this year. Will they be able to duplicate that against the Tigers?
They'll have a tougher time against the Tigers, but that's the thing about North Carolina is they have some players. They can surprise you from time to time. They're going to need some breaks, though. They're going to need some turnovers because Clemson's looking in true form right now.
That's right. I mean, if you know, I know Gamecock fans are watching too, because say, hey, okay, we lost to North Carolina. Maybe Clemson doesn't beat North Carolina 63-7. Maybe it gives the Gamecocks some hope that they can hang in there with the Tigers. Clemson is a situation kind of like Fort Dorchester. If they just take care of business and don't get a lot of guys hurt, there's no reason they shouldn't win this football game going away. Kentucky at South Carolina. Let's have a little trivia.
Okay.
What team has beaten Carolina 5 years in a row, in addition to Clemson?
I was fixed to say, is this a trick question? Is it Clemson?
No.
I don't know. Kentucky?
Kentucky. I think that's right. I think Kentucky's beaten South Carolina 5 years in a row. That doesn't even sound possible or right to me. But it is a fact, I believe. So Kentucky's at South Carolina. Carolina's coming off really it's a disappointing loss at Missouri. It was 34-14. We talked about how we thought maybe Carolina being a 10-point underdog was wrong, but maybe those guys in Vegas, they're good. They know what they're talking about. They were right. Yeah. But anyway, so I mean, how are you seeing Kentucky, South Carolina on?
I mean, Kentucky isn't the Kentucky of old. We're just a team that just everybody walked over. The last 5 or 6 years, they've put some good teams out there on the field. They've played the Georgia Bulldogs in some tight games that Georgia probably felt lucky to get out of there with a win. But South Carolina has their backs against the wall.
No doubt.
It's kind of like they need to get it right, and they need to start getting some W's now, or it's going to be too late and their season's going to be a wash. So I'm looking for South Carolina to play really well. And are they at Carolina or at Kentucky?
It's in Columbia.
I think that might be the difference. I mean, the Gamecocks tend to play better, as most teams do, at home. What do you think?
Well, I'm with you. I mean, if I'm a South Carolina player, after what happened at Missouri, I mean, you gotta be ready to play this Saturday, because this is a game. If you want to have some sort of decent season, this is a game you really need to win. It's Kentucky at home. I know that you've lost 5 in a row in the series. That doesn't really matter. I mean, if you want to use that as motivation, if you're a South Carolina player, then yeah, then maybe it does make sense. But if you're South Carolina, you showed some promise against Alabama, I thought. I mean, losing by 24 to Alabama, and competing, a lot of the game. I thought that was a promising performance. Well, of course, they go to Missouri, and then didn't work out for them. Actually looked pretty bad. So anyway, how I see it going, really and truly, I think South Carolina is going to get off the oil slick, and I think they're going to take care of Kentucky this week, and I think they're going to get back on track, and they really need to, because if they don't, this season will spiral out of control. I think after this week they're off, and then they got to go to Athens to take on the Dogs, who, by the way, are off this week. Charleston Southern is off this week. Georgia beat Notre Dame. Did you watch that game?
I did watch that game. That was a good game.
One of the best games I've seen. I was actually surprised that Notre Dame kept it close. I did give the Irish a shout out by saying go Irish. I didn't really think it'd be that close, honestly, but certainly was an excellent football game. Well, I mean, that pretty much does it for this week, Roger. See y'all on Friday night, and see you next week.